All right. It looks like I think we're live. Hi everybody. My name is Crystal and Sophia. I'm pulling something up here to hopefully be able to give you guys some more information of what I was planning for this week. But Mercury retrograde is just on it right now. Like if Mercury retrograde had a job and it was to mess with stuff, it is doing such a good job at its job. Um, that does mean that I'm a little irritated because there's stuff that I'm trying to be able to do that I can't, but that's okay. We will wing it for the stuff that we don't have the details for, and the rest will be posted later this week. One of the things I realized as I was jumping on here is that I never recorded a Leo new moon video, and I'm headed out this week. I just recorded the Aquarius full moon video. So I'm a little bit ahead of my time here because I will be traveling next weekend. So full disclosure, next Monday we will not have a live call, but the Monday after we absolutely will, and that will be before this full moon. So everything's all set for that. The immediate stuff, less so. So it is good to see you all. Thanks for being here. Hey, Steph Lynn. Hey, Jenny. Amber, our wonderful mod, has been already kind of giving you guys warm welcomes in the comments. Hey, Greg. So, yeah, this week on July 24th, we have a new moon in Leo. We also have some other stuff happening this week that's a bit spicy, and it's leading into more stuff that is spicy. So, I'm going to give you a little bit of a kind of overview of this week and next week. And I'm just going to let you know like, the headlines have been wild, right? And we've had feelings about them in whatever way we're having feelings, and those are all valid. I think the headlines are probably going to continue to follow this thread that they've been on. So spicy, as in, I honestly, it's dramatic, but we'll have to see. Some of the aspects have a legacy of being quite spicy, as in like kind of stressful spicy. Some of the aspects look like, because of their timing, that they're going to be spicy in ways that maybe having you grab your popcorn, so to speak. So it's important. And if you're dealing with someone else's feelings right now, as some people are in the comments, that's just Mercury retrograde in general. Mercury retrograde in Leo right now has a lot of people projecting their wounded pride onto other people, and that's been much. So it's just a time where we're in a bunch of different retrogrades. The sky is lining up for big changes over a course of several years. A lot of the other planets are like, hey, look at that, I'm going to bring it down to you so you can see it. And this new moon is pretty close to those. So I will show you what's going on. Yeah, there are some things that we're not going to be happy about. There are some things, like I said, that may, depending on how you feel about things, may make you want to grab your popcorn. Um, but it's going to be active. Let's call it active. And then just my biggest advice is just be present with your own emotions. You know, like if you have a feeling, witness the feeling and say, wow, I have emotions about this. Am I okay? What am I doing? What do I need from other people? Like really do the me questions so that you can do the us wisely, right? So ask yourself the me questions so that you can handle the us situations in a calm and grounded way. That doesn't mean that you let yourself get walked all over. It means that you know what you need and you can communicate effectively and with, emotional awareness for yourself and maybe also for the other person, and hopefully lead by example where they can do that too. Um, so that's going to be some of the big stuff coming up in general with Mercury retrograde, but also with some of the transits that are going to pop off to really amplify that kind of energy. Lots of stuff happening. So I'm going to take some time to catch up on some of the comments here, and then let me know while I'm catching up, are you ready to look at the chart? And it's going to be a couple different things that I'll be able to show you. So let's catch up here. Yay. Ooh, Greg's opening a show this week. That's really important. That's awesome. Uh, let's see. Da-da-da-da. Yeah. Cool. Show us the chart. Yes. Awesome. And if you do have any other questions, like Amber is saying, go ahead and put them in the chat and we will get started. So I'm going to show you Luna. So this is Luna for the new moon coming up. as you can see, it's going to be around like 3:15-ish p.m. on the East Coast. And so you just want to adjust your time for that if you want to get exact with it. If you're trying to do any magic with this, I recommend doing it after the moon is exact, because while the moon is exact with the sun, it's technically afflicted. So you want to give it a little bit of time. Any time over the next day would be totally fine. You actually have like a day and a half to 2 days or so, because it's so early on in Leo, that you'd be able to work with it. And the first thing that we can see here is the moon and the sun are at 2 degrees. The first 3 degrees or so, especially of fixed signs right now, and even in some cases we could go for mutable. They're busy this year. They are the busy ones. So when a planet gets to a new sign and it's in like those 0 to 2 degrees specifically, but 0 to 3 we could say, you know it's going to pop off some stuff that it's going to be connecting with. And so let me show you what this looks like. The sun and the moon are here at 2 degrees. Now, it automatically, when we isolate these two, it brings out the other story that's been going on. We talked about this a little bit briefly. I know I've been going off on it everywhere right now, because this is a story that's going to be developing for a couple of years with us. And so we had a lot of outer planets shifting signs this year, which means these slow planets that have shifted signs haven't gotten very far in them. Some of them are going to back up into the previous sign, stop and move forward, and then come into that sign again. So that prolongs the amount of time that we're working with this bigger aspect between them. And so if you can see it already, we are looking at outer planets. Now, that is not the sun and the moon. They're about as personal as you can get. So when we look at the outer planets, the one that's going to perfect the quickest, and that's hanging out a lot, is this Saturn Neptune situation. Because they are so close to each other, they've been building this up for a while, but they're going to be walking hand in hand for a long time. Now they're going to back up into Pisces again together. They'll stop there, and then they will move one after the other back into Aries, and then start that process of separating. But it's going to take a long time, because they take a long time to move. They are far, far away. And so again, if you think about the distance between Saturn and Uranus in our solar system, if you line them all up, the distance between Saturn and Uranus is the same or similar as the distance between Saturn and the sun. So that's how far apart they are. They are really spread out there. Kudos to the sun for having that kind of gravity. That's amazing, which is why we give the sun all the kudos as being the sort of leader of the planets in that space. The sun is in dignity here, right? The sun rules Leo. So we got that going for us. This is the month where the sun gets to be at home. And of course, the entire time it's going to be getting sort of a, we would normally say, supportive trine, right? From Saturn and Neptune. But really what that's going to do is really give us opportunity and make it very easy for us to be able to say, what boundaries am I blurring, or what blurry things am I solidifying in my life? Saturn likes to make stuff hard, angular, solid. Neptune likes to do the exact opposite. It likes to dissolve things. It likes dreams. It likes illusions and that kind of stuff. Think about Orpheus, right? And so then we have Pluto opposite this lunation. And so that's going to separate pretty quickly. But Pluto by sign is going to be opposite the entire time this sun in domicile. So it's not the sun's favorite year in Leo to come back to, but it still is there. And it is separating from these guys pretty quickly. So if you are in the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom Patreon and you're on the Making Magic tier, yes, I have a sun election for us in August, and I'm very excited to be able to share that with you. So the big aspect we're talking about is Saturn, Neptune, which is forming a sextile aspect to Pluto, which is forming a trine to Uranus, who is now in Gemini. So, and of course, Uranus is forming a sextile to Saturn, Neptune. So they're all talking to each other. That is, all of the transpersonal planets plus Saturn are talking to each other. This is definitely epoch shifting kind of stuff, right? We have Pluto, who just moved into Aquarius. That's a multiple decade cycle that Pluto goes through. All of these planets that take multiple years, 3+ years in a sign, and much more than that, half a decade in a sign in most cases, are moving and starting something new at the same time that our cycles between Saturn and Jupiter are really developing and starting something new. So new is on the menu, even with a new moon. So let me catch up here on what we're saying here. Um, let's see. Uh, okay, we're talking about some of the headlines, which I'm disappointed too, gotta say. Um, do, 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 do. Define basic terms for astrology, such as trine and conjunct. I never know how to picture it when you discuss it. Okay, cool. This is perfect. Conjunct is conjoining, right? So when you think about conjunct, and Demetra George in her book has a really great helpful thing with aspects. When we think about planets conjoined, they become one. When we think about planets that are opposite or oppositions, right? They're opposite each other. It's like two. It's very binary. It's about alternating sides, right? So also you can think about it as this red line is a rope between them and it's forming tension. They're playing tug of war here. When you think about a full moon, the moon opposite the sun, it gives us a time of reflection and a time of better awareness because we can see very directly what's on the other side. So thinking about the number two and that sort of binary opposite kind of situation. When we think about a trine, you can think about the number three. In numerology, this would be really helpful, but you can also just say that a trine is, to me, I like to think about it like a slide. So because trines form a triangle, right? So you can see there's a little triangle there. They're in the same element, so they've got a lot in common, which means that it's very easy for them to understand each other or very easy for them to see each other and do helpful things. They're very friendly to each other. So it's like a slide. There's nothing in their way. If we were to have a square, which we do, it's not like the most prominent thing in the world, but we'll use this here, like a square here between Mercury and Venus. Actually, it is pretty prominent. So they are at an angle from each other. And so their situation is kind of giving the side eye. They have to go like not in a straight line at all to see each other, to work with each other. There is some action that has to be taken. I have to make a hard pivot in order to make this work. So that can sometimes bring conflict, which makes us make choices or take action. Squares bring that kind of action related to the number four, if you want us to talk about that and how there are corners to it, right? And then we have the sextile, which is actually six. It's also very overlooked in ancient astrology. It's not brought up a ton. It's considered friendly, like it creates an opportunity, but it's not open and in your face. So it's not like, hey, here's this really great thing, but it does allow the planets to interact with each other in what is typically considered a beneficial way. So there are your major aspects that I really cover. There are more that people have started splicing them all over the place, and they make them work. In astrology, we have other ways to describe that. In Hellenistic astrology, the more traditional astrological approaches, we have other ways to really work those things out rather than looking at quincunxes and semisextiles and those kinds of things. So I work with the ones that make perfect geometric shapes because that's what the ancients did too. Not saying one is better than the other. This is just my sort of dialect of the language, and it works really well for me. So, Greg, I hope that that helped. Thank you for asking that. Really appropriate question. Um, yeah, cool. Awesome. I'm just catching up here. Hi, Christina. Good to see you. I appreciate this community too, Jenny. I'm so glad you're part of it. You are here every week and it is noticed and it is appreciated. Thank you. Um, all right. So, found in a different life. Have you heard about the new planet? Yes, I have. Do you know how astrologers? I've been waiting for this question. The new planet, by the way, has already been disproven. They found some kind of other body that kind of made up for the fact of what a planet would do. Now, remember, here's an important thing. When we find new planets, because they're so far away, and the same way we found Neptune originally, we find them through math. And so they'll look at things and they'll say, the way that things are moving, the equations don't work right unless there is another factor. And so they say with this other factor, it would have to be this big, this small. It would have to have this kind of orbit in order to make the deviations that we're seeing in the math that we have in front of us. And so they said there is some solid evidence that there is a body out there affecting the orbit of other things, and that's probably a planet. What they actually came around to was, I think it's called, they named it Ammonite. And it is not necessarily a planet or a planetoid. And so we wouldn't really consider much of it because it's not in the language or word base of things that we use. Asteroids we use, but they're also closer. They're in the asteroid belt. Some comets we use, but comets are more like omens because of how infrequently they come in. So if there's a comet, you pay attention, you notice what it's bringing, and comets generally mean this regardless of their name. This planetoid, super far out there. If it were something we were to interpret, we would need time. We would need a lot of time to say, well, when did it come in? When did it make aspects? When was it discovered? And what was happening in history at those moments? Now, this planet, when they were first thinking about it, had like a 24,000 year cycle or something like that. It was a big one. It's like an entire astrological age. And so it would come around every astrological age. And so that to me makes it even harder to interpret because it's not going to come out around often. To me, I would more likely consider that the same way I would consider a comet, where if we did see it, it would be an omen, and we would take that as an omen rather than saying, well, this specific thing has these specific traits. It doesn't come around frequently enough for it to make that varied of an impact. That's my personal opinion and some of the discussion I've had with my peers in astrology. Those discussions will continue, of course, and I will continue to inform you. If there is something interesting, I will definitely make a video about it. But right now, it's sort of like, it's a very far away thing that is not what we thought it was. And they are still discovering it. So when they figure out what it is, then we'll say, okay, what does it mean? So that's where I'm at right now. Yeah. Yep. It's a great question. It's important. I am reading all of the scientific articles on it. Don't worry, because yeah, it would add some more depth and color to what we do. And we would have to say, if this exists and we acknowledge that other things here have meaning, perhaps this one does too. How do we bring that into the circle? So yeah, and I haven't been able to answer that on a different live. So thank you. And Kay, yes, you are bringing up something that I also wanted to talk about. Mars is conjunct the South Node this week. Yeah, that's the one that I mentioned that was like spicy and maybe not the best way. And again, guys, this is not something to be like cowering about or going out and just like fearing everything. We don't necessarily know where things will show up. We can make guesses based on certain things, but the problem with locating where an event is going to happen in the modern era is that when they first assigned sections of the Earth to different planets or different signs or anything like that, they didn't know about the Western Hemisphere. So they didn't give us any applications or any assignments. And so we can't kind of roll with the same understanding because we're working on a bigger map. And so with that, we're working on it. There's a book that I got recently that tries to rectify that. And I'm going to do some more work on it. And a lot of that's going to be work done in retrospect to see if this actually matches up with what we're doing to test the theory, right? So right now, to make a prediction using that would be, in my personal experience and where I feel comfortable, it would feel a little irresponsible because I don't have enough data to feel confident and I don't have the peer review to say, I'm not the only one who's thought about this and I've taken into account other people's thoughts. It's very important to do that kind of thing, especially in astrology, especially if you're going to bring astrology to social media. So with that, yes, Mars is conjunct the South Node. Yes, when Mars is conjunct the South Node, big dramatic things typically happen of a martial nature. So why? Mars has the nature of, think about the god Ares, or Mars in Roman pantheons, the god of war. And so war is not the only thing that Mars does, but Mars is kind of like a little soldier. And sometimes Mars is the superhero that comes in and avenges things. Or sometimes Mars is the one that's like, hey, I'm going to knock you out because I have aggression towards you. Or sometimes Mars is the explosion. Or, it's actually shares the nature of a square aspect. So what we were talking about before with that square, with that angle, action happens. And a lot of the time, action has a lot of energy to it, and that energy has to go somewhere. And so it is what happens when the energy builds up and is ready to go somewhere. And so that is the nature of Mars. Mars conjunct merging with, right, the South Node, which has a very vague interpretation in ancient astrology. They would say like the South Node, the nodes add a certain intensity no matter what because of their poignant positions in the sky. They are not physical bodies. So interpreting them on their own doesn't really give them a lot to work with. But when a planet comes into contact with them, especially by square, opposition, or as we see now, conjunction, then we say, okay, this planet is in sort of that cyclone part, or if you imagine like little whirlpools in the sky and the planet gets sucked into the whirlpool and something intense happens and then the planet moves on. That's kind of what we can imagine with this point in the sky. Right now, Mars, and this, of course, is the 24th. So if we were to move to today, Mars is here at 19. It's still applying to this. So if I were to move to one day ahead, it's going to happen the 21st at some, no, sorry, that's going to happen on the 22nd at some point, because by the 23rd, we can see that that Mars is now on the other side. So it's going to be on the 22nd that Mars will perfect this conjunction with the south node. And now I brought us back to the new moon, so we'll be able to work with that. So Mars in conjunction with the south node has typically brought a lot of dramatic headlines of a martial nature. I want to sit with myself for a second and make sure, okay, I'm going to bring it to you all. Would you like to know some of the natures or some of the examples that are not exclusive, not an every time situation, but some of the things that have happened during Mars South Node conjunctions? I'm going to leave that to you because this is an important moment of consent. I've already talked to people in the Modern School of Ancient Wisdom with it. But just know it's a lot. It's intense. It's got a lot of stuff. I imagine we'll be seeing some things in the headlines. And if we don't, fantastic, right? Okay, so we have one person sounding off so far. I want to make sure we get, okay. Hey, Russ. Hey, Allison. Hey, look at all you guys. There you are. All right, awesome. So now again, location is hard to pinpoint with this situation. So somewhere in the world, it is likely that something dramatic happens. We would typically look at Virgo and say, well, what country is most associated with Virgo? In order to do that, I would look at countries that maybe have Virgo in the rising sign of its chart, if it has a chart for when it was established. In the United States, we have what is most commonly used is the Sibley chart. There are several charts that go off, and we use the Sibley chart because it works in a lot of situations, and that makes us a Sagittarius rising, which is not Virgo, which could play to our benefit. But that would still place this as angular because Sagittarius is down here. So this will happen in the 10th house of the Sibley chart. So a ton of yeses. Thank you all for that. So times when this has happened before were September 11th, 2001, was August 7th or 8th of, 2023? Not August, sorry. It was October 7th of 2023, I believe was, or it may have been 2022. But if you remember October 7th, you know what I'm talking about. And that was also near the eclipse points, of course. It was right before an eclipse in Libra at that time. So these are the dates. Now I'm giving you the dates. You can look them up if you don't already know what they are. And that way you have a choice to do that or not to do that. And to just know, again, it's headline stuff, right? It's headline stuff. It may be something that we have big feelings about. It may be something that brings a certain sense of shock to situations because Mars doesn't really do things quietly. And so that's something this week that we may notice. And, in the sign of Virgo, I will let you know when I get back. If you guys remember to ask me, I will then respond. Also, hi, Hunter. If you ask me on our next live, which will be in 2 weeks, I will respond if it hasn't been obvious with what I think would have been most associated with it, because I will be researching, did anything happen, so that we can have continuity with this. If nothing happens, then we have to look at it and say, okay, it's happened before. What factors did make it pop off? What factors in this case made it not as big of a deal? So we can predict better in the future. So, those are some of the dates. There are more, but I'm not going to dwell too heavily on it because I don't want to stir us up into feeling out of control and helpless, which is not what we are, right? We are coming to a new moon in Leo, which is emphasizing our leadership abilities more than anything. So yes, we do have this going on right now, which is something I'm keeping an eye on. And then we have this new moon, which is really close to, and by close to, I just mean aspecting and talking to all of these outer planets. So with this in play, And then also with the aspects that are going on with this new moon, I would say we might see even more headlines this week. Some of the most prominent headlines in the US from last week about certain documents, I think are also going to persist. And I feel even more confident about that prediction. Over the next 2 weeks, I think they're going to continue to persist. This week and next week are a very interesting time where the metaphorical timing of the United States Aries ingress, which we've talked about before, is when you take the Aries ingress and sort of let it unwind itself over a timeline that it makes from its start to the end of the year. And then the real timing of the actual transits actually do seem to reflect each other in a couple ways. And then the people who are involved in those headlines about the certain documents also have patterns in their charts that match up with what's happening in the metaphorical timing and in the real timing of the transits. So because we have a yes over here and a yes over here and a yes over here, I think that that's going to say, like, this is something we do notice. It's happening in the background, it's happening in the foreground, and it happened when these people were born. So they are the players that come in because they are sort of activated by what the planets are doing, because they have that natural energy in them. And again, student study tier, I've done the actual analysis, and you will get the full details of who I'm talking about, what I'm talking about, the exact dates, and all those kinds of things. Not because I'm trying to keep it from anybody, but because this is stuff that really does benefit from consent. So yeah. And then after the fact, I will let you know what it was, not to be like, oh, look, my predictions were right, but because by that point you will already know about it and you will have been able to process your own feelings about things. And I will not be the one stirring up any fear mongering. That's where I'm coming from on these things. So I hope that's okay with everybody. We have ways to access it if you're interested in that. And, you know, when I can or when I feel like it's okay, I do kind of do them here in the lives, because this is another area where you come here and you show up every week, and I appreciate that. So I want to reward and be grateful for that. So yeah. Okay, cool. Thanks, Steph. So I will let you know the aspect that is coming up, and you can kind of, so Venus is actually going to, she's going to get into Cancer. And if I do this handy dandy thing that I can do in Luna, when she moves into Cancer on July 30th, she's of course going to be entering into a new sign. So that means she will be at the 0 to 3 degrees of a new sign. And in this case, she's going to square, here we go. She's going to pop off. She's going to square that Saturn. Saturn is close to Neptune at this point, of course, but that square with Saturn is something that we can take as an interpretation. And so this is something that is happening in real time. That's the real time aspect that I'm looking at. And you can see that's going to be on the 30th. So a little bit into what, next week or over the weekend or something like that. That's the timing we're kind of looking at for when does this kind of go off a little bit. And then after that, I'll be home, because there's more I want to talk to you guys about when Mars gets into Libra, but we can talk about that and the Aquarius full moon at that time, which is really helpful. This is what's happening next week, which I won't be able to talk about on Monday because I'll be gone. And so I wanted to bring it up with you here just to let you know that we've got some stuff going on. Yeah, Rita, that is 100% what I'm here for. Brooke, hey. So Brooke, anything that I've gone over, you're in the student study, so you'll be able to see like the detail stuff. And again, it is there. And I hope I say it clearly. I get really jazzed. I'm like, oh, look at this, look at this. And that comes into what we call astrology good, right? When you're excited about something as this technique that you use, it's like, oh man, look at it go. But then you're like, oh man, people are involved in this. And that's less invigorating, right? So there is this thing that you have to make sure you do of balancing mental health and responsibility with the, wow, look how accurate that is kind of excitement. I see this play out in my personal life all the time, where something will happen and it makes me miserable. But the way I pull myself through is be like, the astrology was totally accurate. And it's been doing that to me a lot this year. So the good news is it gets eventually better, at least in my own personal timing. So I'm just like, this is when it gets better. So I know that it's not forever, and I move myself through. If we do a consultation, that's kind of how we work things. Like if it's a rough time, we look at when is it going to be over and what do we do to keep our sanity in the meantime and stay occupied. Yeah. So thank you all for being here. It's really exciting. Amber just pointed out there are 22 of you, and that's my favorite number. So I love that. So yeah, that's the aspect, giving you the timing of when it'll happen. Venus, of course, being in Cancer, she's great there. Aries is not Saturn's favorite place, but he's going off there for a while now. And so these two being in square to each other, Venus in general gives us relationships stuff, or if you wanted to do things in a very literal sense, would represent female presenting people. Um, and then Saturn, of course, would show a little bit of misfortune there, a little bit of disloyalty or something like that. And so just be aware that we might be in a time where we have to really be honest. Honesty is what really is going to make Saturn feel good. This square is like, if I'm being honest, and even if it's not easy, here's what I need. And then you communicate it and it works out really well. And you have a deeper relationship and it's wonderful. So if I'm going to give you advice for this kind of energy that's kind of applying right now that we're coming into, be honest and also lean into that Cancer energy for Venus, right? You want to feel seen and you want to you want to feel like you belong. So does the other person. Going into a conversation knowing that you're both just trying to feel seen and feel like you belong is going to help you feel so much better about having a conversation. It is not about you against that person. It is about you and that person against whatever it is that's not in alignment right now. How can we like take this bent up rod and straighten it out so we can see more clearly? And you do that together. So hopefully that helps a little bit as well. Let's see. Happy Monday, Shauna. Been here, but tech is in the microwave. It really is. Yeah, it is. Who's feeling the Mercury retrograde a lot, and anything that stands out for you, put it in the comments, because I know I'm feeling it, but it's also angular for me. And I'm traveling this week, which will be fun. And it's like tight schedules, which I should have known better than to do. Like you're an you're an astrologer, Krista. It's Mercury retrograde, but also this is an astrology event I'm going to. Why are we holding it during Mercury retrograde? Anyway, awesome. Hey, Rocio. Uh-oh. We offered the sirens something? I didn't see that yet. Yeah. Cool. You went because your niece was born. Hey! Sorry, that's really exciting. It's the heaviest you've ever felt. Mercury retrograde. Yeah, lots of stuff. Just the water. Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So with that, we still have tons of time. So I brought out a lot of information and I want to give you guys the opportunity to ask me questions about it. If you have concerns and you're like, this is going to bother me, I can feel myself spiraling, ask the question. I will give you a way to be able to work with that in the context of the astrology in a practical way to do that. For anyone who is thinking about being a consulting astrologer or a consulting diviner of any context, counseling skills. I cannot recommend them enough. I have certification in multiple different counseling skills, and I love being able to use them. They're a lot more fun. Internet's been ridiculous with this Mercury retrograde. Agree with that. Ren is a Leo rising, so Mercury's in the first and has been flat hair and food poisoning. No, not the flat hair for the Leo rising. Wow. But also food poisoning's the worst. I'm so sorry. That sounds like a lot. I hope you're resting really well. Yay! Cool. Yeah, I recommend I really think mental health and seeing people as people, anything that helps us do that is a really positive investment for the foreseeable future. Like for the rest of the time that we'll be here, I think it's a good idea. I think it is part of the solution to a lot of things. So my stamp of approval for as much as I can on that. Yeah. So, like I said, any questions about the Leo new moon? Any questions about the Mars conjunct the South Node, Saturn square Venus, anything like that that I can help with? Yeah. In your conversations, make sure right now, because it is Mercury retrograde, Mercury does communication. We want to make sure that we are being here's my advice, okay? That you are being as objective as possible. We just need to state facts, keep it short if you can keep it short, and just do that kind of stuff for a while because people who are not aware or self-aware are having a really hard time and they don't want to deal with it. And so these people who don't want to deal with it, they're going to take it out on you. And if you don't offer them any receipts that they can then, use to return, it's going to work out for you a lot better when things go direct again. Yeah. Yeah, lots of people are being reactive. And that makes sense. It's a fire sign, right? So you know it, they don't. And so, this is where you get to really play around with the magic of self awareness, which is like a huge part of magic. Self awareness is a huge step in being able to use magic in a really big way. So you're doing great, is the theme there. With all the energy is a good new moon to work with. Is this a good new moon to work with? Well, let's come over here. So, yes, I'm going to say yes if instead of yes and. Yes if. Let's talk about what this new moon wants to do, right? What is this new moon offering us that we can work with? It is a new moon, so it's planting some seeds. It is a new moon that is really focused on the way society is shifting and building. And so it is a new moon in Leo. Leo is, of course, the person who leads by example, the light that shines in the darkness, the person who may not get a ton of validation for what they do, but has to really trust their instincts and their inner guidance and their heart in what it is that they are doing. They have to make sure that what they are doing is for a reason that makes sense to them and does not require as much validation externally so that they can continue walking forward in confidence. So, what I would be doing during this full moon, if I were at home and not traveling, I will be traveling at this time. So, if I were to use this full moon or this new moon for something, I would be listing out things about myself and doing belief work on things that make me feel insecure. So, I would list and catch any thought I have about myself that doesn't feel kind. So if I say I'm just not good enough or, something about my body that I don't like or whatever, I'd catch that and say, okay, reframe it. Here's what I can do. Here's what I do know. Here's what I can feel confident about. Here's how I can accept this thing about me and love it for where it's at for right now, right? There are some things that we are growing in, and the process of growing is allowed. You do not have to be from 0 to perfect, whatever your definition of perfect is, immediately. It's not how things work. We are an evolving kind of being at all times. So you can be happy for just today, or you can be happy for I've made it this far and I can't wait to see what I do next. Those things are how you can really help yourself when you're mid-process on something. When we look behind us and see how far we've come, it's a lot more encouraging than looking ahead and feeling like there's too far to go. So I would make sure that you really give yourself credit for what you've done. Um, yeah. Wait, Jenny did a card pull that said, uh, do judge people's reactions because more than likely it had nothing to do with you. So don't judge people's reactions. Be aware of how you react first. Yeah, that card was spot on. Definitely things to remember. And remember, like your world is your story. Their world is their story. So they are the main character of their story, very Leo energy, right? But you're the main character of your story. And so you get to decide how much your story is affected by their story. Are they just a side quest? Are they a major plot device? Are they, and remember, they are humans. We're not taking away the fact that we're dealing with other people. The whole NPC trend, I'm not really a huge fan of. Everybody is, worth seeing and worth understanding and worth, they are having their own life. But as far as your ability to control or how you think about yourself in a situation, you have to decide how much weight you're giving that other person. Are they just telling you more about how uncomfortable they are and then they're projecting it? And that's actually not your circus and not your monkeys. And so you can start working on your main quest over here, which is something a little bit more aligned with what your desires are. Or is this something that's right in front of you and you're like, you know what? I do have a part to play in this. I do get to, take action in this situation. And I'm going to do it in a way that lets us both shine or that says, hey, I don't feel like you're being yourself. How can I help you? Because every conflict, every time someone's acting mean or something like that, I'm not going to say every time, majority of the time, they have a need that's unmet. And I personally believe it's every time, but I allow for the fact that I don't know everything in the world. So I can imagine that there may be some circumstances that's not true, but they have an unneed met. Is it your responsibility to fill that need, or can you move on? I have had to, in many situations throughout my life, and even again recently, had to say what this person is going through. I can recognize it, but it's not my part to fix it for them. So I hope they have everything they need, and I'm going to focus my energy over here and be ready in case I am someone who can be helpful later. And if not, great, I'm focused over here. So that's some stuff that you can, work on and think about during this new moon. If you were to give yourself like an affirmation to work on with this, it is, let's see. One of the things I would say, and I am going to have a post on this throughout the week, and I've forgotten what I put in that post. um, but it would be, where do I shine the most? What is the warmest area for me? Where do I feel seen for who I am and not for who I'm expected to be? Where am I happiest and seen? So, where am I both visible and happy at the same time? Those are some really great questions to ask yourself, and then put that into action in your life. You wrote your to-do list yesterday at the end of the day because you were feeling like you hadn't gotten enough done. Now, I hope I hope that was helpful and that like today you do feel like you get enough done. I'm sure you did everything that you were meant to do that day because that's the way that day went. And I hope that it feels like enough now. Being someone of the neurodivergent persuasion, I have a lot of days where I'm like, I got one thing done today. That was awesome. Go me. I got a lot of things done this morning because I'm preparing for this travel. And I celebrated it, but also it was stressful. So I like those days where I'm like, my one thing is enough for me today. You have an interview this morning over Google Meet and you're praying technology behaves for it. Rocio, sending you the best energy for that specific moment to be protected in the best way. And if Mercury retrograde does something, at least you'll be able to handle it with grace, right? You can say, oh, it's okay. I can work with this, or it's okay. I'm not going to stress about it. And hopefully that shows them how stable and what a great leader and what a great team member you are. And I hope the interview goes really well, by the way. You're awesome. And I hope you get what you want out of it. Yeah. Okay. So we have a question here about how a progressed chart works. Let's see. Let's just take this chart, and it's not going to let me because I'm in a full moon. So I'm going to go to transits for today. I'm going to show you how a progressed chart works. So if we update to now, is it going to let me do it, or do I have to have a birth chart? So we'll just save this as sample, make it a birth chart. And now it's going to let me do the stuff I want to do. There we go. So now we can we're going to look at secondary progressions. There are tertiary progressions, and you can go deeper and deeper and deeper. Secondary progressions, though, are your standard when we talk about progressed charts. And so I'm going to show you natal biwheel with a secondary progressed chart. Initially, it's going to be exactly the same. So this is right now, right? And so this is your birth chart. On the inside is your birth chart. Secondary progressions will tick your chart forward for every day. They're going to equate that to about a year. So they're basing this on the sun's motion. And so what you're going to see is the first 30 days of your life, according to this theory, have the first 30 years of your personal growth in them. And so you look at the chart and you say, okay, natal promise, what is this person doing? What are their aspects like? How do these planets really represent themselves? If planets are like fairy godmothers, what gift do they promise you, for better or worse, in your chart? And then we say, how is this going to progress? How does this move forward? Assuming that we, being born in a moment, continue to move forward. This is another example of that metaphorical timing we were talking about. And so if I move this forward by, I'm going to do 30 days because I want us to see, it's not going to let me do 30 days. So I'm going to click this 3 times. Bear with me. So we're on days. I'm going to do it 3 times to give you something to look at that's not just, very similar to what it already is. So if I click this once, twice, 3 times, now we are supposed to see some movement. So yeah, we actually are. So 30 days, I should have done 30 years. Okay. So what we'll do is do 10 years and we'll move forward. Now we'll see some movement. So 10 years after you were born by secondary progressions, right? We're going to see that Venus has evolved to the point where she's kind of changing her focus. She's moving into your 11th house. She's in the Cancerian traits now. She's getting closer to Jupiter. And so over the course of your life, that conjunction that Venus was eventually going to have with Jupiter will show up in your life. And you'll have this conjunction of the benefics that something good happens in your life at that time, especially if you have this chart. And so we would look ahead and be like, well, when does that happen? And at that time in your life, at least based on this technique, we can expect something good to happen in your life as well, where just out of nowhere, something awesome occurs. Now, you can look at this gets a little complex, but you can look at it, especially when it comes to the moon. This is what we do the most of, because this person would have been born with a almost balsamic moon. The moon is waning towards that new moon here. And so the moon is waning towards what will be a new moon in Leo. And so the moon continues, and eventually the new moon hit and it continued on. So now we see that this person is in almost the first quarter moon phase of their life. So now their life, as far as the energy and the development's going, they are actually in a phase of life where energy is increasing, where awareness is increasing, where they're trying new things and they're having that first quarter moon sort of energy in their lives. Eventually, they'll get to a full moon where they might gain a lot of recognition, where they might have a lot of clarity on what they've been doing for the past 15 years of their lives, because it takes 28 days for a full lunar cycle, right? So it'll take 28 days for the moon to get back to where it was, 28 years for the moon to get back to where it was when you were born. And you look at the new moon and the full moon, like you always would, to see most noticeable moments. And so this person, when they're 10 years old and some, will have a almost first quarter moon situation. So they might be having a lot more activity in their lives. Now, they're only 10 years old. This starts getting really cool when you're older and have more authority over yourself. So if we say like 20 years, now their moon is over here. It's past that full moon situation because the moon is now, or the sun is in Leo and the moon is past that. So it's in a full moon phase still. They're probably having a lot of activity going on. Now, at this point, they're like 20. So we can assume they are starting to build their life. They are starting to actualize themselves in a way that's going to feel like who they want to be as an adult. And so, yeah, there is some energy here, but also there's this affirmation that stuff is happening for them, especially with the sun being in Leo at this point. They were born with a Cancer sun, but now it's taking on some Leonine qualities. So they may be having a lot more confidence or leadership opportunities. It's in their 12th house. So they may be focusing on limiting beliefs that prevent them from feeling like a leader. And if they do that really well, then they can share it with other people, because the moon is in a disseminating phase. It's in Pisces, which kind of emphasizes the idea that maybe they're helping other people in their 7th house with some mental health stuff, with some metaphysical stuff, which also would be emphasized by the 12th house. And you can see how I'm interpreting that already, right? So we say you started out here. Right now, you might be going through this. You can also then take into account what are the planets out here aspecting the planets in here. Like when Venus was conjunct Jupiter, something good would have happened, like a Venus Jupiter conjunction, where something about their relationships was acting upon what Jupiter is doing in the chart. Jupiter does good things, so they may have really positive relationships that lead to really good friends and a lot of good recognition and feeling like they're part of a community or helping them nurture other people. This is me plugging in a lot of keywords that would go along with the natal promise. So this is secondary progressions. It's one of the timing techniques we use to be able to say, how are you doing in life? How's life evolving for you? How are you growing? This is more of a personal thing, as you can see, like personal stuff seems to come in here. It's how am I doing on the inside? Whereas other techniques that are from a little bit more of a traditional standpoint will be like, when are you going to get married? When does a big event happen in your life? So it's how is life happening around you as compared to progressions, which is how are you progressing? So those are some things you can think about. Excellent question. I hope that was helpful. So Brooke says, I've heard this is more relevant around 50 or 60 years old. Sure. There's no reason. I wouldn't say it's more relevant. I've seen it work really great. Again, it's more relevant once you're a full adult, once you're responsible for everything in your own life. A lot of things are. There's actually the question in astrology comes up of, do we even do a reading for someone who hasn't had their Saturn return yet? Because if you haven't had your first Saturn return, some people would say your life's not fully in your control yet. So, how helpful is it to have the astrology reading? Now, I would not do, I have the rule of like 18 and older. I want you to be a recognized adult in society before I'm going to do it. Um, and the things that are important are on a different scale when you're still supported by family, parents, society, than when you are very much more independent. So it's just a matter of that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, for the 50 to 60, kind of, because you're having like your second Saturn return by that point, which is more of a real time situation. Saturn has come back around to where it was when you were born for a second time. But as far as progressions, maybe what they're saying is that planets have had the ability to do a lot more motion in that time. Because one of the things you can take note of here is Saturn has not moved a whole lot in the 20 years because Saturn's a slow planet. So these guys, same. Jupiter moved a little bit, but not a whole lot. So it didn't give it a lot of time to make an aspect with something else or to have something else happen. So while the moon, Venus, Mercury, the sun, even Mars have made some big moves, these outer planets haven't gotten to go anywhere because it hasn't been enough time. So someone might say, yeah, when you get to the point where you're 50 and 60, those planets have had the opportunity to move. I do more and more consultations with people who are in their 60s and 70s, and then Saturn may have crept up on something. And so we say, oh, wow, Saturn's on the move. Or, hey, Jupiter's made it over here. And because they have had that amount of time to do something, you can see their effects popping out. Yeah. So that might be part of the reason why you've heard that, which is a great thing to bring out. Thank you for sharing that. Let me try to catch up a little bit. I'm going to bring this back to transits so we can play around if we want to. All right. Okay, to-do list. Da, da, da. So I actually did not prepare a rant today because I wanted to make sure I had enough time for questions regarding the transits because there are some big ones and I wanted to hold space for those. But again, if you have something you want me to rant about, I am so open to recommendations. I would really like to rant about what you want to hear and what's helpful for you rather than just going off on my own thing. So please, if you have suggestions, you can email them to me through my website. You can respond in the comments of this video or any of my YouTube videos, or even any of my videos on social media. Yeah. Let's see. Cool. Interesting. Saturn return makes sense, but if they want it, why not? Yeah. If someone's looking for direction in their life, I'm there for them, especially after 18, right? Because at that point, you are making more independent decisions for yourself. And so it helps to have that. The question becomes, am I enabling them to not think for themselves? And so you have to really get into that. But it's a case by case basis. And that all comes into me for me to style. That's why I use coaching techniques in my astrology rather than just being like, you're going to have a hard time. That's all it is. I'll say like, hey, it looks like we may want to pay attention to certain things at this point in your life. Is there anything that you know of that's already developing towards this? How can we prepare for it? How can we make it feel more comfortable? All of those things, you're letting them decide for themselves because you want to give the person, the client, as much agency over their life as you possibly can because you're not God. And it's, we are translators of the time. And that's where I respect my position to be. I am an enabler for a person to be the best version of themselves. And that's my role. Yeah. Just wondering because my progressed MC is currently conjunct my natal Jupiter. So wanted to figure out what exactly that could mean. Okay. So this is a personal question, Ren, and I'm happy to do this. And we only have about 5 minutes. So I'll do that really quickly. How does personal development help to interpret astrology? I think I need to understand that question better. I'm going to finish reading these comments. I'm going to answer Ren, and then I'm going to also see if I can wrap my head around the question. If you want to rephrase it, Brooke, it's not that it's a bad question. It's just that my brain didn't catch the right way to respond to it. It happens. Definitely feel planets can communicate. Yeah, I do too. Is it possible to communicate with the planets? I channel the planets all the time. Okay, so this is what I'm going to do. We're going to talk to Ren, your progressed midheaven, which moves a little bit faster as far as the planets go, has made it to Jupiter. Depends on where Jupiter is in your chart. Again, a consultation is best for this. I would see it, interpret it, and take everything into account. But in a very general sense, the midheaven moving to where Jupiter is going to bring about something that Jupiter is doing in your chart, whatever that is. Jupiter's natal promise is going to be something you're recognized for, is going to be something that involves your career. And so you may have some stuff that's like, whatever Jupiter is telling me that it's working with me on in life, that is something I'm moving towards. That's my North Star. That's what I'm getting recognition for. That's what people are seeing me for. So that would be a very general interpretation. Personal development. How does personal development help to interpret astrology? Personal development, in my opinion, just helps us do better with the astrology so that it doesn't feel like we are a victim of the astrology. It feels like we are having the better way that the astrology could go, being something that feels comfortable for us. So in personal development, the goal is, how can I be as aware of myself as possible and move with the flow of life in a way that doesn't make me feel attacked? So basically, how can life happen for me instead of life happening to me? And so if you do personal development, your astrology, you can then see in a way that you can say, oh, I see this hard thing coming up, but I know how to use that to my advantage, or I know how to take care of myself during this period of time. So personal development sets you up for better success in handling life. And we see life coming up in astrology, and we can strategize using those wise personal development tools to make it feel more comfortable, or to see purpose in it, or to come up with constructive ways to navigate that time. So that's what I would say to that question, which is a fantastic question. Is it possible to communicate with the planets? 100%. I channel them all the time. Literally, that's what I'm doing in my skits. I tell you, I'm channeling the transits of the planets for you this week. They are separate from deities. I know Pluto is the same name as the god of the underworld in Roman mythology. I know Neptune and all those things are deity names. And throughout history, the planets have been given deity names. And those names have been replaced archetype for every civilization that has come and used it since then. The planets were always understood to be a representation of the movement of the gods. Literally, Mercury retrograde is Mercury walking backwards away from Apollo when Mercury stole the cows, right? So that story shows up there. So it is the gods kind of showing us what they're doing so that we can then act accordingly with our own lives. It is, if you want to use it instead of, like, if we think about the universe as the prime thinker or the prime mover, it is what it is thinking about at that time, so that we can say, oh, they're thinking about this, I'm going to do this. They were thinking about you when you were born, and here you are. So it is different. If you're going to work with Mercury, the deity, it's going to feel different than working with Mercury, the planet. Hermes feels different than Mercury, the planet. Saturn, Kronos, feels different than Saturn, the planet. And so I work with the planets primarily, and they are the ones I channel the most. Similar archetypes, but different expressions, because the more varied expressions can come about. Awesome. When I channel Jupiter, I get cool big bro vibes. When I channel Jupiter, I get Ghost of Christmas Present vibes, that sort of come in and know me better, man. And I have like a cornucopia of things I'd like to share with you and that kind of stuff. Loud, booming voice. So same, Greg. Yay. Yes, Brooke. I'm really happy that that's one of your goals right now. Been there, return there frequently. It's one of those lessons we get to learn more than once a lot of the time. And there's grace in that. Yeah, it's there. That's how it originally was. And if you read the ancient texts, it's there. If you read the Bible, it's there. Like, it's all over the place. They looked up at the sky, they saw these things moving, and they thought, whoa, this means something. What does it mean? And so astrology and religion and myth really informed each other. There was a lot of overlap there. In my current process, I truly believe we looked up at the sky and we saw, whoa, and we made stories appropriate to it so we could live our lives by that. I think astrology may be part of the source of many religions. And I'm actually looking at a graduate certificate that I can hopefully get more research done on that. So wish me luck and funding. Yes. 11th house Jupiter. Yeah. So you might find a lot of good support and community, Ren, with that. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Jupiter is good things. I wouldn't be concerned about that at all. Midheaven is typically good things. And that's the best house of the chart. So good things all around. Reasons to be excited. Yes. Thank you guys so much. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen. so that I can see you guys more. I hope that was helpful. We went a little bit all over the place, but that was a lot to cover. And I think we did a great job. I will not be here next week, but I've already got the week after scheduled. So you can set a reminder if you want to. And that way you'll know when I'm back. I can't wait to be back. I always look forward to working with you guys. I'm getting better at astrology all the time because I'm going to keep studying. I'm also getting into a new course of astrological magic that I'm going to get better at. So I'll be even better at that for you too. That way I can answer your questions and help you as much as possible. I look forward to that. And hopefully this Leo new moon makes you feel seen and bright and loved and warm. I will see you again soon.